Hello, ladies. How are you guys tonight? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay. Awesome. Thank you so much. So I know it's 7 o'clock. I'm going to give everybody just a minute or two. I just sent the last little reminder to get people in the room. So give them a minute to click on that link and get here for the belly burner masterclass. So thanks so much for joining me this evening. Before we get started, I am Jennifer. For those of you that don't know me, are there any questions that you want to make sure that I cover in the masterclass tonight? If you want to drop those in the chat or you want to just unmute yourself, that's fine either way. I always want to make sure that I'm providing information that's, pertinent to what you guys are curious about and have questions about and that kind of thing. So let me know if there's anything in particular.
Oh, my camera is thingy.
Sometimes these Zoom links don't like to work. All right, well, we're just going to go ahead and get started because I want to be respectful of your time. And as people are coming in, I'll let them in too. So I'm probably going to ask you to just unmute unless you want to ask a question or you want to participate. I'm probably going to mute everybody just to keep it easy. All right, but feel free if you have questions, drop them in the chat or unmute yourself. Happy to answer any questions that you have moving forward. So if you are new to working with me or watching any of my lives, I really like to make these very interactive. So I'm happy to answer questions as we go through. This is really, information that I want to share with you that is relevant. And I think it's very important for all of us to get, up-to-date information about belly fat and menopause, because I know that is a hot topic for a lot of women. So I want to make sure that I'm, going through this and answering questions that are pertinent to what you're curious about. So we're going to talk tonight about how to decrease that midsection without starving ourselves. So do me a favor and drop a 1 in the chat if you would like to not have to starve in order to lose weight and lose that belly fat. I know there are a lot of women who struggle with weight loss in menopause. And so definitely an area that, we want to get a little bit more information about and actually get some results with, right? Because there's a lot of information out there. And we want to make sure that we're focusing on the things that will get us those results. So here's what we're going to talk about this evening. So how to eat so that we have long-term consistency and actual results and not just quick fixes. So I know, again, that there's a lot of information out there, a lot of people that are talking about kind of, do this, don't do that, those kinds of things in menopause. And I really feel like we have to really dig into what works best for each individual person. I say often that if we're going to really talk about menopause in general, that's great. There's a lot of information, a lot of kind of symptoms that we have, the weight gain, the belly fat, the hot flashes, those kinds of things that can be sort of universal when we're talking about menopause. And when I say menopause, I mean perimenopause, the actual stage of menopause, and then post-menopause. So if you're sitting there thinking, well, I'm I've been through menopause. It's been several years since I went through menopause. Is any of this relevant for me? It absolutely is, because in postmenopause, we're still talking about hormone fluctuations. We're still talking about, a slower metabolism. We're still talking about muscle mass loss and that kind of a thing. So it's still a very pertinent conversation and very relevant to what you're struggling with, even in postmenopause. So we're definitely going to talk about how to get those results that we're looking for. You got it, Diane. Good job.
I had to open it on my desktop for email.
Okay. All right. So it worked. That's good, because these Zoom links can be a little tricky.
Oh man.
I'm just gonna keep everybody unmuted. If you have a question as we go through, feel free to unmute yourself, drop questions in the chat, however it works best. Happy to have a conversation as we're going through. I don't want anybody to feel like they have to type everything out, so feel free to unmute as you want to. But I'm gonna click on that little mute button there, Diane, just real quick. We're going to talk about the truth about hormones and the aging process. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about hormones and kind of the lack of results that we're able to get because of them, right? So we feel like, well, hormones are working against me. There's just no way that I'm going to be able to lose weight. It's definitely just part of nature, right? And we're told that it's okay, you're just in menopause, there's not really anything that you can do. And there's quite a bit of research out there about things that we can do. And so when we are kind of faced with wanting to get those results and feeling very lost in all the chaos and all the noise out there, that's kind of what I really focus on and try and break through that noise. So we're going to talk a little bit about that too. And then the key factors causing your belly fat to increase, because there's definitely things that will contribute to that as well. All right. So why is beating the belly fat during menopause important to you right now? Tell me in the chat, give me, a few words about why is it that you even wanted to listen to this masterclass? What is it that it has been on your mind that you're just like, I really need to get this sort of taken care of. I need to focus on my health right now, because it's really important that I lose the weight, lose the belly fat, focus on making those changes right now. So let me know in the chat why you think that it's important to you at this point. I'll give you a minute or so to do that. And while you're doing that, I will also say thank you so much for taking time out of your busy night. I know this is a kind of a tricky time to get on a Zoom call, so I appreciate you guys taking some time out this evening. I feel like I can put my socks on without struggling. Chris, that is a really good point. So being able to do the day-to-day things, right? Being able to take care of ourselves in the way that we want to take care of ourselves, and being able to do that for ourselves, being independent in those day-to-day activities. Don't want it to get out of control. Absolutely. Because at some point, we keep kind of tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, then I'll focus on it. So I'm really happy to see that you're paying attention and focused on that now. To feel comfortable for the rest of my life. Absolutely. I was just having a conversation with somebody the other day about, once we get to our 40s and 50s, it's kind of like, now what? What do we do? Right? That we've got a whole nother, half of our lives that we're kind of reinventing ourselves for, and really focused on how does this half of my life look, as opposed to what, kind of living in the past and thinking about what I used to do. What do I want from here on out, instead of getting frustrated and feeling like there's no changes to be made. So all very, very important information. So a couple of other things to think about as far as why it's important. Diane said, I would like to fit into my clothes, change my shape so I don't look so dumpy. Also, I had gestational diabetes, and I understand menopause increases the chance of developing diabetes. And yes, that is very true. And we will talk about why that risk of type 2 diabetes increases. You do have about a 60% greater risk because of gestational diabetes. So if you are someone that had elevated blood sugars during pregnancy, that does increase that risk of type 2 diabetes. Then on top of that, we have this lovely menopause that we have to pay attention to as well. So really important that we're looking at that belly fat. We'll talk about how that ties in with type 2 diabetes and elevated blood sugars and that kind of thing too. So we do want to prevent things like type 2 diabetes and heart disease. So what a lot of women don't realize is that menopause increases the risk for both of those things. So while in our 20s and 30s, we may have been more focused on, you know, some of the things like fitting into our clothes better, feeling more comfortable, just feeling a little bit more at ease with our body shape and size. That's not irrelevant at this point in any way, but that might have been kind of our big driving factor, right? Now we have some of those issues along with the fact that our bodies are a little bit older. And so we have to understand that there's things that our risk goes up for, including type 2 diabetes and heart disease. So abdominal fat is one of those things that we want to pay attention to and really decrease to the best of our ability. You know, if we've had children and that type of thing, that can change our body shape and size, but we definitely want to pay attention to how is that fat distributed and what can we do to help prevent, you know, that further kind of increase of the belly fat? What can we do to just overall help to improve our overall health and our well-being and be able to decrease our overall kind of fat stores, not just the abdominal fat. And then we also want to make sure that we are, you know, again, not hiding behind other people, being able to live our lives, getting out there front and center, right? Being a part of life as opposed to feeling like we're always kind of in the shadows or in the background. And definitely getting results and actually feeling better right now instead of waiting or getting lost in all of that noise of weight loss, right? Drop a 3 in the chat for me if you're just like, oh my gosh, it's so overwhelming. Which supplement is the right supplement? Which diet am I supposed to follow today? You know, which expert am I supposed to listen to? Like, who's going to tell me exactly what I need to do and make it doable? Because I had somebody message me yesterday and say, you know what? I'm a busy person. I don't have a lot of time to do this, but I know that it's important. And I want to make sure that I'm focused on taking care of myself to prevent some of those things. So understanding the importance is really key to then digging in and making that commitment to showing up for ourselves and really making some of those nutrition, exercise changes so that we can get the results that we're looking for. So this masterclass is definitely for you. If you feel like you've tried all the diets and nothing is really working, and in my heart of hearts, diets aren't necessarily where I like to spend a lot of time with people because I feel like we've sort of been there, done that. The diet industry is about a $66 billion industry. That's a lot of dollar bills. So we spend a lot of time and effort on looking at, you know, how do I count calories better? How do I weigh food better? Those kinds of things. And really what it comes down to is we'll talk about the kind of the 3 pillars of what we need to focus on to get the results that are sustainable and lifelong in order to actually get things to work, to get those results. You just want to be able to get through the day without feeling like you want to take a nap. Now, there's nothing wrong with naps. If you're a napper, that is fantastic, but naps are 20 minutes long. I'm so very sorry for those of you that take 2 or 3 hour naps. They're not really naps. So we want to think more in the 20 to 30 minute range. And that's kind of a pick me up, right? That can help with energy levels through the day. But if we're sleeping for hours, then we have to really think about, you know, how are we showing up and are we doing what we need to do to feel our best in order to get the best results through the day? We also want to be a part of the fun, right? We are at a point in our lives where we have a little bit more freedom. Maybe you know, the kids have moved out of the house and that kind of thing. So we have a little bit of maybe more time to ourselves. So we want to be able to go out and do the things that we enjoy, that really make us feel like ourselves again. Maybe we don't want to do the same thing that we did when we're in our 20s. But again, that reinvention really speaks to, I know it speaks to me, and I hope it speaks to you of like, what's the next step? What do I want to do next instead of just staying stuck where I'm at? And if you're tired of hearing it's just menopause, you just have to get through it. Menopause itself, actually perimenopause or premenopause, can last for 10 years. So can menopause. And then you're in postmenopause. I actually had somebody say, well, once you're out of menopause, like you're done, right? Like it's just, you're done. But really, once you hit premenopause, you're in menopause, you're in some sort of menopause for life. So it's not something we can just like get through. It's our existence. It's how we're living our lives. So we have to learn how to show up for ourselves in every stage of menopause the best way possible. For a little bit of clarification, because I feel like there's some confusion about that. Menopause itself is the 12 months of no period. So you don't really know you're in menopause until you're at 12 months in a day, because you can be in premenopause or perimenopause, where your period like starts and stops for quite a while. And then you have that 12 months and it's like, oh, kind of like sort of forget that you didn't have a period for 12 months. And then you're in postmenopause. So when we talk about menopause, we tend to just use the word menopause, but it does include that pre and that post. So why are you guys even here listening to me? I just want to spend a minute on, giving you a little bit of my background. So I have been a dietitian and a therapist for quite a while, over 30 years, which once you add those numbers up, it's like, wow, that's quite a long time. I have had a long and colorful career in nutrition, and I love it. It's a passion of mine. I really think that, the human body is amazing and we can do a lot of amazing things, but we have to really learn to pay attention to what our body is telling us, right? So if we have pains or aches, or, we're getting that belly fat, or we're gaining weight, or we're having headaches, or whatever kind of symptom we're experiencing, we got to learn to live, kind of think about what our body is telling us, because it sends up red flags and we have to sort of learn to be able to know what that's all about. I am in perimenopause myself, so I understand from a personal perspective. I will have hot flashes as I'm talking about hot flashes probably in a few minutes, so I get it. I get up in the middle of the night and have the night sweats and that kind of thing. Definitely have the mood swings. You can ask people that are around me, that kind of on and off type of a thing. And I'm just, I just got really tired of hearing people say there's nothing you could do in menopause. Because I do believe that this is kind of the let's go part of our lives, right? Like, what do we do next? How can we get to the place where we're showing up in the best way possible for ourselves? So that's enough about me. The real reason that we're here tonight is for you to make sure that we can kind of touch on some of the topics. No problem, Diane. Eating is good. I love food. So the real reason that we're here is to talk to you about you and how do you get the results that you're looking for. As you can imagine, 60 minutes isn't long enough for me to go into an individualized plan for each and every one of you, but it's a way to really start the kind of thoughts going, right? So what do we need to think about when we're talking about making changes and improving our health in menopause? Has to be more of a conversation than just calories in versus calories out. Put a 3 in the chat if you've heard that before. Just eat less and exercise more and you'll be fine. Weight will come off. It'll be great. And then you're like, well, tried that and that wasn't quite enough, right? So yeah, so definitely kind of the mainstream diet answer is you just need to count calories better, eat less, exercise more, and you'll be fine. All right, so I have a little piece of homework here for you. Actually, it's not homework because I'm going to ask you to do it right now. I want you to pay attention to what I'm going to go through, these kind of statements that you might be saying to yourself, and I want you to count up how many of these would be applicable to you. And you can decide if you want to drop that number in the chat. It's up to you, or just kind of keep that in mind as we go through the rest of this. So I have to move this out of my way. So nothing will work no matter what I try. No one understands, and that can be family, friends, providers. My doctor doesn't listen to me. I don't want to live like this anymore. I can't stop crying, can't stop craving sugar. And we'll talk about that sugar, how that plays into the increased risk of diabetes as well. I was a personal trainer for years and we were told calories in and calories out. I know better now. Yes. thank you for for seeing the light with that. That's amazing. And that probably helps you in what you're doing, you know, in your conversations with other people, even though, Lori, I don't think you're personal training anymore, but you know, even just having conversations, being known as a personal trainer, that's a really great message to get out there, because the more people that are talking about it, the better off we are. I can't do this alone. Sorry, Zoom is just making this really, really difficult for me to go through these. I'm embarrassed to go out with my friends. I'm embarrassed to have sex. I'm tired all of the time. I hate myself. I hate my body. What's the point? I'm just going to give up. I can't eat anything without gaining weight. I'm so tired of counting calories. Keto only works for other people, and you can fill in the blank. Whole30, Weight Watchers, whatever. There's something wrong with me. I'm so angry all of the time. I'm never going to sleep through the night again. And everything makes me anxious. So think about how many of those are things that you struggle with. And I will give you a little hint as to, because I am a therapist and a dietitian, I kind of go into that, some of that emotional piece, and a lot of people talk about the difference between working with me in in this space of really digging into what is going to help you get the most results in menopause, and with the weight gain, with the weight loss and the belly fat and all that, is really looking at that emotional health. So really digging into, how are we showing up for ourselves? How are we talking to ourselves? And if you are getting, you know, a high number when you're looking at these statements, these are things that go through your head over and over and over and over again. So imagine if you were the person, if there was two of you, and you were talking to your alter ego and telling yourself all of these things. Drop a me in the chat if you feel like the telling yourself all of these things over and over again would actually be worse than better. It wouldn't encourage you, right? It doesn't motivate you to tell yourself that you can't do things. It's much more motivating to tell yourself that you've got this, that you can do this, that you're going to keep going, that there's, you know, you can make a different choice the next time. So we have to think about that mindset and how that plays into the choices that we're making when it comes to taking care of ourselves, as well as the choices that we're making day to day in our food choices. One food choice of, you know, something that you think is unhealthy does not make or break your entire meal plan. And I think we're very, you know, black and white thinkers when it comes to what we're doing as far as our meals. And that can definitely play into our success or lack of success when it comes to dealing with the belly fat. I think there's a lot of information out there about, you know, the calories and the right diet that you need to follow in order to lose weight, but we don't pay enough attention to how does our mindset affect what we're choosing as far as the foods. So let's talk a little bit about those factors that can affect the belly fat increase. So insulin resistance, if any of you have been diagnosed with insulin resistance or have heard of insulin resistance, it's basically another word for pre-diabetes. So pre is before, right? So it's before the diagnosis of diabetes. It's an elevation in insulin. Insulin is a hormone that helps to lower blood sugars. So what happens for people is we eat things that are higher in carbohydrates, we eat things that are higher in sugar, and we release more insulin. And since insulin is a fat storing hormone, guess what? We're going to have more fat stores. Not exactly what we're shooting for, right? So it definitely increases insulin resistance, risk increases. Why does that increase? Tends to be that we're a little less active than maybe what we used to be. Less focused on balanced meals. Put a 4 in the chat if you are someone who used to cook, used to like to cook, and now it's like, I don't want to. I don't have the energy for it. I don't have the time for it. There's not as many people in the house. I just don't feel like it. So there's a lot more emphasis on quick meals, on maybe more processed meals, maybe stopping for fast food on the way home, those kinds of things, because, you know, there's kind of some justification, and I don't want to dirty all the dishes to cook for one person, right? So we have to figure out a new way to kind of think about that. And then less energy. So we're just, frankly, just more tired. Potentially more sugar, more alcohol, more quick meals, more processed foods, all of those things can increase. And it's kind of like, I find it that it happens just sort of slowly, right? So it just becomes like, oh, I used to plan my meals every week. I used to cook once a week. I used to go to the grocery store. And then it becomes like every 2 or 3 weeks that we're going to the grocery store. And then there's nothing in the house. So we stop at fast food or something like that. So all of those things combined can really increase that risk for insulin resistance or prediabetes. And all of that can increase our risk for more belly fat. Also, that change in hormones, right? And there's nothing we can do about, some people will say, oh, can I just skip menopause? Would love it to be able to allow you to skip menopause. However, we're female, menopause is going to happen. We're kind of predestined, right? And it depends on, some people will experience it in their 30s. Some people will experience it in their, 40s, 50s. And, usually it's by 54, 55, people have been in menopause. But some people go through it very early. Some people will have surgically induced menopause, they'll have like a hysterectomy and then they'll have that surgically induced menopause. And then I still feel like when they're in their 40s and 50s, they have some of these same things happening. So it's not like it's you go through it and then you're kind of done. Again, once you're in menopause for life. So that lower estrogen can cause more belly fat or belly fat to increase. And then we have less muscle mass as we age. So if we're not being as active, if we're eating more processed foods, all of that is going to increase the fat stores, decrease that muscle mass. And so when we talk about things like bone health, our bone health decreases as we get older. And so if we're not doing that physical activity, we're not doing the strength training, the exercising, then our lean muscle mass is going to decrease. And that again can cause more of those fat stores to happen. And more of that belly fat. Is this making sense? Drop a 1 in the chat if this is all making sense to you guys. Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm getting older. Isn't this just all part of the process of aging? So yes and no. I think that what happens, and again, we go back to that sort of emotional versus physical result. What happens is we tend to think, I'm just older, so I'm going to be tired. Weight gain is part of it, right? My mom gained a bunch of weight in menopause. I'm definitely going to gain a bunch of weight. I'm definitely going to, I'm going to need a knee replacement because that's what all of my aunts and my mom needed. All of these things that we sort of set ourselves up for that don't have to happen. I'm not saying that there's not an increased risk for it, but if we just sort of succumb to it and expect it, then that's what's going to happen. We're going to naturally slow down. We're going to just sort of accept that our bodies aren't going to do the things. And I think that, Lori being a personal trainer, I think you can attest, you've seen plenty of people who keep up, and Lori being a good example of that, keeping up with that activity makes a huge difference to all of these things. So we really want to not just give in or just assume that just because we're getting older that is, definitely going to happen. So there's changes that we can make to how we take care of our bodies that help to reduce that risk of insulin resistance. Drop in the chat for me what you think one of those things are that can help to decrease that risk of insulin resistance. What's one thing that you think could be a small change to help to decrease that risk? I promise it's easier than it's not easy to be consistent. It's an easier switch than you think. Planning meals for one. Yep. So meal planning, huge part of what I talk about with the people that I work with, because if we don't have a plan for where we're going, we're going to get lost every single time. So if you've heard this before, I apologize, but I share it all the time. I am directionally challenged as the day is long. If you put me in a car and I'm in Ohio and you tell me to drive to California, I'm going to end up in Texas. It's just going to happen, right? Or Alaska. You just never know. Depends on what's going on. So I have to have a plan, right? We have to have a GPS. That's what meal planning is. It's a GPS. If we don't like it, if we can't stand it, there's lots of things that we can talk about. And I'll actually, what I'm going to talk about at the end is a special offer for tonight. That's the meal planning is included in that for that very reason, because it really needs to be a part of something that we look at. and we take into consideration. Exercise, absolutely. Moving our bodies. Our bodies are not designed to just sit, right? So we have to get that physical activity in. And you'll say, well, my knee hurts or my back hurts or my arm hurts or whatever. I understand that, but there is something that we can do in 99% of the instances. There's something that we can do to help move our bodies in a positive way. And then eating more protein. Yes, as people get older, we tend to eat less protein. I think it's partially kind of a digestion issue. It's a little harder to digest that meat protein. And then also just, again, a convenience, right? It's a challenge to prepare meat compared to some of the other foods because it takes a little, you got to take it out of the freezer and you got to, it takes a little longer and that kind of thing. So one thing that I encourage people to do is to think about more plant-based eating. I'm vegetarian. I'm not trying to turn the world into vegetarians, but I do think that it's a nice alternative to always feeling like you have to have plant or animal-based meats and animal-based proteins. It's a quicker solution to getting some protein in. So things like beans or lentils, those kinds of things, very high in fiber, give you some protein as well as some carbohydrate, but they can go a long way for kind of leveling out those insulin levels as well as your blood sugars. And then we have, yay on the beans, nuts, and lentils. Yes, absolutely. I always say it's so much easier to be vegetarian because I don't have to like defrost chicken because I always forgot to defrost the chicken. Increased visceral fat. So visceral fat is the fat that's around your organs that protects your organs. That increases as we have that decrease in estrogen and more belly fat that happens. And so that increase in visceral fat is what actually increases that risk of type 2 diabetes, heart disease, stroke, that kind of thing. So these things that we're talking about, getting more protein, exercising, meal planning, those are all part of what we need to commit to and be consistent with when we're looking at decreasing that belly fat. So I always say that nutrition can be easy. That doesn't mean that we don't have to put in some reps, right? We can't just be like, oh, I think I want to decrease my belly fat and this is just going to happen, right? I have women in my program right now that are losing, upwards of 34 pounds. One of the participants lost 4 pounds in the last couple of weeks after having a couple of knee surgeries this past year. So it is possible to do. But she's intentional, right? She shows up, she's committed to the changes that she's making. So it's possible, but we have to put in some of these things that we're talking about for sure. And then there is that big bad word of stress, right? So I am pretty sure that all of us here have some level of stress, and stress is not something that we really can ever get away from completely. Now, there's certainly times where stress is more overwhelming. How many of you drop a 1 in the chat if you are a person who feels like stress plays into some of your food choices, your energy levels, just sort of how you're showing up for yourself on a daily basis? I know it definitely plays into my day-to-day, and kind of when I'm feeling kind of on it, there's a lot of things that happen. When I'm not feeling on it, there's some things that might fall through the cracks. So I understand it, from a personal perspective too, that we're not going to be 100% on it every single day. And there's definitely ups and downs with stress, but we want to be mindful of that stress because that can change how we're showing up, what kinds of foods we're craving, how much sugar are we craving, those kinds of things. Diane is a multiple one. Stress is one of those things, just as a kind of a side note, that can mess with our hormones that tell us when we're hungry and when we're full. So ghrelin is the technical term for the little gremlins that tell us, the hormone that tells us when we're hungry. So think about we're probably all of that age that we remember the Gremlins movie, right? So that increases when we're experiencing stress. The ghrelin increases, exactly what we don't want to have happen, right? We don't want to get hungrier. Our leptin, which is the hormone that tells us when we're full, that decreases. So it's the exact opposite of what we want to experience. So I want you to really hear that when I say that stress can definitely affect how we're going to make food choices. If abdominal fat, belly fat is something that you're struggling with, We want to be really careful of our stress as well. Now, some of you are sitting there going, yeah, I can't get rid of my stress. You know, it's their family members, there's colleagues, there's work, there's bills, whatever the case might be. I'm not saying that we can get rid of our stress, but I am saying that we have to be aware of it. And how is that changing how we're showing up for ourselves each and every day? And that's a lot of what we talk about in the menopause breakthrough method, is just that. How are we showing up for ourselves? How are we dealing with that stress? How are we, definitely paying attention to it, because it can be very, very cumbersome. So imagine when you can decrease that belly fat. How would life change for you? What do you think would be different when you're able to decrease the belly fat and feel better, feel more confident, show up in those pictures, that kind of thing? Let me know in the chat how life would change for you. Or unmute yourself if you want to. That's fine too. Feel like my old self. What could your old self do that you feel like you can't do right now? More energy, absolutely. If I could bottle energy, I think I would be a gazillionaire. Be happier. Okay. So there's definitely an increased risk of, anxiety, depression, that kind of thing with everything that we're talking about. And even just with the increased risk of type 2 diabetes, there's research about, people feeling that mood swing quicker and more intensely when we're talking about changes in the blood sugars. So if blood sugars are running high, if you are experiencing type 2 diabetes and blood sugars are running high, that can definitely affect mood. So anxiety can get worse, depression can get worse, that kind of thing. Feeling more confident, absolutely. Feeling attractive, not dumpy, increasing energy, more confident, not looking old. Yeah, and that brings up a really good point, because I think that what we tell ourselves, how we tell ourselves that we are looking, or how we're feeling, what kind of tape is going on in our head over and over again, we tend to move towards that. So if we're feeling like we're not attractive, we're going to be less confident, we're going to hide, kind of like close in on ourselves a little bit more and not show up in a way that's going to get us more energy. A lot of what COVID did a lot of things, but one of the things that I think became very, very evident is our need for other people and our need for socialization and connection. And so when people are feeling like they're not, like they're getting old, like they're not a part of the fun, that they can't, hang out with friends and just relax and that kind of thing, because they're kind of worried about who's judging this and who's talking about that, then we tend to kind of pull into ourselves and be more secluded. And that's exactly the opposite of how we want to experience life, in my opinion, in that second half, as we're reinventing ourselves. And that doesn't mean, if you are more of an introverted person, if you like to have those quiet times, there's nothing wrong with that. If you like to show up for yourself a little bit quieter, nothing wrong with that. But we have to also understand that we need people, whether it's things like this, where you're interacting on a Zoom call, whether it's something where you're in like my Facebook group, where you're interacting with other women. There's over 1,500 women in there that are struggling with the same things that you guys are struggling with. So really understanding that we need that community, we need that connection in order to continue to move forward and make the changes that we're looking for. So I have often said to myself, I'm 52. Like 52 was supposed to be old, right? Now I'm like, oh no, not till like 80. I'm pushing that right out because it matters, right? If I tell myself that I'm old at 52, then what in the world is going to be next, right? So we have to always think about, we don't want to lie to ourselves and say that I always say that we're wiser, not older. But we also want to, and struggling with 60. Yep. We want to, we want to embrace where we're at and really, really understand what it is that we want now and make the choices that make us the best version of ourselves right now. If we live in the past, then we're always thinking about what was going on then, as opposed to thinking about right now, how can we make this the best time as far as being 60 or 50 or whatever. What we tell ourselves can be the worst treatment to ourselves. Yes, absolutely. And I think that's where I get really I struggle with the diet industry. And the reason that I started working with women in menopause, because the diet industry tells you that there's only one way to do it, right? It's that whole calories in, calories out thing. And we really just neglect the mindset. So one of the things too is, a lot of people talk about the psychology of eating, and unfortunately still talk about the rules and the regulations of eating. So we're still keeping track. We're still calorie counting. We're still doing all of those things that are very diety, as opposed to taking a look. It's a very technical term, diety. Instead of taking a look at how do we kind of balance all that out, right? So imagine when you've decreased that belly fat and these things are happening, you can switch that mindset around. We're increasing your energy. Zoom is driving me crazy tonight, ladies. I swear I'm hitting the button. Now it's going to come up with all of them. Okay. We're feeling like ourselves again. We're saying yes to those social invitations instead of no, I'm too tired. And we're trusting our body to feel like we know when we're hungry and when we're not. Drop a 1 in the chat if you have a really hard time trusting your body to know when you're hungry and when you're full. So part of this whole process is getting back to having a relationship with your own body to understand that you know best when you're hungry and when you're not. Hard time, not really hard. What does that mean, Diane? Let me to unmute you. I don't know. Oh, there we go.
During the day, I'm good, and I can feel satiated by eating like half of something. I bring leftovers home all the time, but in the evening, my mother would have called it having itchy teeth. I just eat,
Mm-hmm.
and then I have a hard time stopping
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because I don't feel full.
Yeah. And I think a lot of women struggle with that. And part of that is that feeling of kind of being on through the day. There's distractions, there's people, there's other things going on that kind of keep you occupied. And then our defenses are down at night. So we have a harder time stopping that snacking, making different choices. We're more tired. We're not as focused on our our food choices at that time. And that's again where that meal planning comes in. Having choices that aren't going to say, no, you're not allowed to eat. Cause I don't know about you. If somebody tells me I'm not allowed to do something, I'm like, oh, just watch me. Cause I'm going to do that. So we don't want to get in that kind of battle with ourselves, but we do want to make sure that we have alternates that are available, that are quick, that are healthy, that we can go ahead and have, as a snack and that type of a thing. So it's not uncommon, but that's where really knowing those signals that you get when you're hungry or when you're not, or, knowing when you're full for your own body, because how I experience hunger and fullness is different than how you experience hunger and fullness. And always keep in mind, it does take about 20 minutes for your body to catch up with you, right? So you want to kind of keep that in mind too, but definitely something that we talk about in the program to really dig into some of those habits. These are just, some experiences that some other clients have had, just to kind of highlight some of those things, because it's not just me talking about the importance of this. There are people that I've worked with that have been able to experience it for themselves. So not being responsible for other people's choices. I hear that a lot. Well, am I supposed to just cook foods for just me? How am I supposed to do that with my family? I think that there's ways that we can do meal planning that make sense, so that you're not being a short order cook. You're not cooking multiple meals, but we're having, maybe they're bowls, or maybe it's taco night, or whatever the case might be. And you can pick and choose kind of what that looks like. But we can always take what you're doing. And that's the great part of that done for you meal planning, is really thinking about how much time would that save you? Right? How much better would it be to just be able to go home and have a meal and not have to feel like you're cooking multiple things? Really speaking truth and authenticity is important to me when we're talking about all of these changes, because it's a very vulnerable conversation. We hold food very near and dear to our hearts. There might be something, a special kind of food that you always had growing up, or you have this food and you have to have this with it. There's certain combinations of things. There's certain kind of patterns of eating that people hold very near and dear. So when we start saying, well, you can't do this or you shouldn't do that, and there's rules, that again ties into our emotional health of, but I want to, like, why can't I? So really talking authentically about what can get you the results that you're looking for. How do we decrease that belly fat and still let you be you? Because I'll tell you, the biggest struggle that people have is trying to do what they're supposed to do. And then they get tired, and then they get bored, and then they're like, I don't want to anymore. And then and that's where that kind of yo-yo dieting happens. And we don't want that. So talking about depression, talking about, what's actually going on, digging into what's actually behind the food choices that we are making, without judgment, without guilt, without shame, without worrying about what used to be, but really focused on what can I do today at 50, at 60, at 70 to make the changes to get the results that I want. And if we're only having half the conversation, which means we're only talking about calories, then we're only going to get half the results. So what that means is, when I talk to people about decreasing that belly fat, I'm looking at 3 different areas: nutrition, emotional well-being, and physical well-being. So physical well-being would be things like hot flashes, feeling like energy levels, those kinds of things. Like if we're having headaches, if we're having joint pain, any of those kinds of things. And the emotional well-being is all of the stress, the feeling overwhelmed, the, just feeling just kind of that snap of, anxiety or depression or those kinds of things, kind of feeling like you're kind of on this back and forth all the time. And then nutrition has to be a part of it. What's interesting to me is we've lost that view of nutrition as actually nourishing our bodies. We look at nutrition as calories instead of nourishment or fuel. And my favorite kind of example of that is, if you put orange juice in your car wouldn't run. We know that intuitively, right? Our car just wouldn't go. But we think that we can just not nourish our bodies. We can just not eat calories, and that's miraculously going to make big changes in our own health. And what actually has to happen is we have to look at that as nourishment and fuel. And we have to think about, how do I show up and actually give my body what it needs and still get the results as far as the, decreasing the belly fat and that kind of thing. And again, I know it's possible because I have clients that have done it. So I'm not just kind of making this up and saying, I know we can do this. Like, there's actual people that have done it. So, I believe it's time to take action to achieve that food freedom. And for everybody, food freedom can be different. We don't have to talk about just spending hours and hours in the kitchen. Actually, I spend more time talking to people about how do we spend less time in the kitchen, because I find most people don't want to spend as much time in the kitchen. How do we get less belly fat? How do we have more accountability? Now, there's 2 kinds of accountability in my mind. There's the accountability where I, as a coach, will show up and walk hand in hand with you through this process. And then there's your own commitment and consistency to the change. And so that does not, never do I put accountability and perfection in the same sentence, because they can't coexist. And I don't think that perfection is possible. But accountability means you're going to make the best choices for you each and every day. And the best choice can still be fast food, because sometimes it just happens, right? The best choice can still be eating a piece of birthday cake at your granddaughter's birthday party. It doesn't have to be never, ever having these things. But we have to have both accountability. There has to be somebody helping you on the outside for that external support, and then that internal support as well. Feeling very self-confident, being at front and center in those pictures, being, feeling confident in your clothes, feeling like you're going to be able to show up as you instead of hiding. Feeling less stress and anxiety, less depression, more energy, and finding ourselves again. So that's ultimately the goal, right? Is for you to experience these things for yourself, because at the end of the day, you getting results is really the only thing that matters. So I know we've covered a lot of information tonight. I want to take a pause really quick before I share with you that kind of special offer that I have, if it's okay with you for me to share that. But I want to stop and just see if there's any questions, any comments, any thoughts about what we've gone through up to this point. Feel free to unmute yourself or drop it in the chat. Y'all are good. Okay. Drop a 3 for me if it's okay if I share with you a little bit of information of what it's like to work through this process on a more individual. Motivation is your greatest struggle. I really believe that motivation is, it's really key to getting the results, right? So motivation waxes and wanes, it goes up and down. And I think when we can own that and we can understand that, that makes a huge difference, because we have this expectation that we're going to start down the path, and the path is always it's going to be a straight line. Actually should have included this picture, but I have a picture of what success looks like. And it's kind of this squiggly line back and forth. And sometimes you go backwards and sometimes you go forwards and some sideways, and it's all over the place, right? And when that's our expectation, that we're going to have back and forth and all over the place, then we can actually get to a place where we're comfortable with that. We know that if we have a setback, or we have a day where we're just not feeling it, anxiety got the best of us, depression got the best of us, we're tired, whatever the case might be, we know that we can still move forward, and we need to just keep moving, keep putting one foot in front of the other type of a thing. It's when we give up and we quit and we get discouraged because it's too hard, that's where we tend to lose, because we're not moving forward, right? So we're not looking for perfection, we're looking for progress. And as long as we're progressing, we're gonna reach those places that we're looking for. Okay, so the Jumpstart program. So I realized that, a lot of women need something to really dig into. We're busy, we've got a lot going on. There's outside influences, whether that's a job or family, or, maybe we got some health things going on, or whatever the case might be. But we need something to really jump into to get quicker results, to be able to, kind of convince our brain that we're on the right path, right? So I developed this Jumpstart program so that you could develop that roadmap first and foremost of how do we even get there? I hear that from so many women. I don't even know where to start. I don't know what to do. Am I supposed to count calories? Am I supposed to do keto? And, am I supposed to intermittent fast? Like, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to start? So we do that deep dive assessment in order to give you a plan. If you don't have a plan, again, we're going to end up in Texas. Texas is a nice state, but we don't want to go to Texas if our goal is to get to California, right? So we don't want to go backwards. We want to be moving forward. And then follow up. So we have that initial assessment a couple weeks later. And by the way, everything I do is virtual, so it's all on Zoom. We have a follow-up appointment a couple weeks later so that we can keep the energy, the momentum going. We can ask questions along the way. In between all of when you're working with me, I am available as close to 24/7 as I can be. So I probably won't answer at 2:00 in the morning. I hope you understand that, but I will answer the next morning, because one of my son's 6th grade teachers actually proved this point to me better than any other example I can give you. It was 7:00 on a Sunday, and my son struggled pretty mightily with anxiety, especially related to school. And he was stressed. There was a project that was due on Monday. He didn't have any idea how to figure out this one answer to this one problem. So he messaged his teacher, and she responded within 5 minutes. And his anxiety went from here to here. And he got the assignment done. He went to bed. The whole house was quieter. It was great. And so part of what I feel is super important for you guys is to show up when you need it. So I have a client who was every day she'd leave work, she'd drive to the goodie bar. The Goodie Bar, I think, is like a bakery, something like that. So she'd drive there every day after work. And she one day got in her car and said, have had enough of that. She messaged me. We had a 5-minute conversation. She didn't go to the Goodie Bar. She went home, made herself a healthier snack, and then didn't go to the Goodie Bar again. So it's those kinds of things. It's that follow-up. It's that kind of giving you that accountability moving forward that I find to be super helpful for the women that I work with, and it helps, give you that accountability and kind of that follow through. That done for you meal planning that I was talking about gives you the opportunity to maximize your time when we're talking about what kinds of foods, what kinds of things am I supposed to have? How many, how much protein is in that particular meal? What happens if I put this food with this food? It does it for you. It plans out your meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snack ideas. If you're like, but I only eat breakfast and dinner, okay, then you can just plan those meals. But it gives you that roadmap, and it's super, super easy. It lets you plan those meals around foods that you like and not just foods that other people like. So it's not a meal plan that is made up of what other people want to do. I just love this picture. I found it. I thought it was a cute picture. This is about giving you a sneak peek into my bigger group program, allowing you to come in once or twice into that group setting and just see kind of what that support and that encouragement is like on a bigger picture. I do have a 3 and a 6 month group program. So a lot of people that start this jumpstart decide whether or not that's a good direction for them, but it allows you to kind of get an idea of what that looks like in that supportive community before, kind of moving on to the next step. So all of that definitely is available to you tonight. And what I'm going to ask you to do, if you're interested in going ahead and once I kind of show you a little bit more of the details, if you're interested in getting started with me, you can go ahead and drop the word yes, and I will send you the link to get registered for it. If you have questions or anything, I'm happy to stick around for a few minutes after I go through these next couple of slides to answer any questions that you have. So again, deep dive assessment, that individual follow-up, 30-day access to that done for you meal planning, unlimited support, and then that sneak peek into the menopause breakthrough method, which is my group program, into those meetings. And then I do have a special limited time bonus for the first 5 women that sign up. And that bonus is basically 8 mini modules, short videos that allow you to get started to get some results today. So they're super quick, super useful tips that you can get started with today. So what does all that look like? So if we broke all of these components down into their each individual kind of piece, it would be valued at over $500. I'm offering it tonight for $250, one-time payment, getting all of the different aspects to that. So I would give you immediate access to the meal planning software and that support once you sign up. And then I would go ahead and give you that special bonus as well. So I say, click at the link in the comments. The unfortunate part about Zoom, this is where my technology shows, right? You can't click links in the comments. You can't do that. So feel free, drop the word yes. I will go ahead and reach out to you and get you the information. Again, if you have questions, if you want to get on a call with me and talk about things, a little bit more on an individual basis, I'm happy to do that as well. Reach out to me and we can go ahead and do that. I do have limited space on my calendar. We are coming into the fall season, before the holidays and all that kind of stuff. So things are getting a little bit crazy, getting more people on my calendar. So I do want to make sure that you get on there as soon as possible so that you can be that next success story. So with that, any last minute questions as we wrap up our time together this evening? Okay. If you do, you guys know how to get a hold of me. So thank you so much for spending an hour with me tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. So if there's something that later on you're thinking about, drop a question in the Facebook group. I'm happy to talk to you there. But thank you so much, ladies. You will get a copy of the replay. So if there's anything that you missed or you want to go back and see just from registering, you'll get a copy of the replay as well. So feel free to take a look at that as well. All right, ladies, thanks so much. Have a good night. Bye.